Welcome to Mindfully Integrative Podcast with your host, Dr. Damaris G. Mindfully Integrative is a podcast discussing ways toward mindfully incorporating integrative health into our lives. This podcast will have informative resources, fun topics, interviews, and discussions relatable for today with a true mindful perspective in a mind-body, holistic life approach.
System right now. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm just kind of talking about that. I'm also talking about what are the reasons that people, things are coming in, have any absorption issues. If you have any questions, reach out to me at any time. Right now, the system and how it affects the body. And so we talked about what foods, so specific foods like allergens cause an inflammatory response, malabsorption, excess alcohol, eating habits, so under chewing, so recommended about 20 to 30 bites per meal on average for mechanical breakdown starting from the mouth, so that it can give you proper digestion. That's where those enzymes are helpful. Eating too quickly or in a stress state can be a factor. Things of that nature. Do you know what I mean? So I would always say, hey, what would be a factor, right? What would be something that would cause an irritant? Then I'm just looking right up here for a second, and then I will just add it so you can see. I think it's in my showcase already. What I use is the saffron, the digestive enzymes. And I've used other things too. I love magnesium. It's one of they're my faves. And then a few others. I definitely have a variety that I love. The ideas we're talking about, improving our gut health, right? And how do you do that? You do that by putting the good stuff in. And once you understand some of the root causes of it, it becomes a little eeasier. Do you know what I mean? If like once you get an idea, you're like, oh, okay, I can do that. So it's, it's neat. It's not too hard. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Hope you guys can see me. I'm just hey, what's up? Thanks for joining in, Ashley. I appreciate it. All right. So I'm talking about the eating habits, and then we're going into like adequate hydration. So you'll hear me talk about, and everyone will tell you about what is adequate hydration. Adequate hydration is about 64 ounces for most people, give or take. If you can get to about 72 to 84, that would be nice. Half your body weight, let's say you're 100 pounds, you do 50, or you're 150 pounds, you do about 75 ounces. Ideally about 64 ounces, give or take, and have some electrolytes in there too. When you overuse of certain medications, that will also decrease the malabsorption and the intestinal permeability of the body. Things of the nature of like too much proton pump inhibitors. Someone that has reflux, usually they'll take a lot of Tums, or they'll be on Pepcid or some sort of medication, and they think that's helping their reflux, when in turn it actually it causes and reduces the stomach acid. And the problem is you need more stomach acid to help decrease the overall degradation of the stomach lining, and it helps with gut mucosal healing, but it is irritating to a person that already has a dysregulation and may cause ulcer. Or they may have an H. pylori infection there. They may already have had other infections. So having PPIs for long term can be actually a detriment to someone. But, when it happens is people take them, and then they think, oh, it's helping them. And long term, it actually is not. Long term use of antibiotics, those kind of things, opioids, things of that nature. Then people smoking, not having much physical activity, not having adequate sleep, basic lifestyle stuff, those things are pretty important. And how do you, improve yourself with this? You think of it like your digestive enzymes are decreased, and we need to get it back into regulation. How do we do that? This malabsorption is it's pretty complex, right? It's not. We are, our bodies can heal, but when they have been placed on a lot of stress, like when there's a real bad dysbiosis or an imbalance, like the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or small intestinal fungal overgrowth, those are, that's when the body has too much starchy foods or it has too much fungal, in the intestinal walls. And that has to be then that point will then need medications. So that's something that causes problem for individuals. They have an imbalance of, a diverse amount of the microbiome because of the food intake. They're not really eating the right cruciferous vegetables. They're not really eating vegetables at all. Inflammatory and immune dysregulation usually has to do with not digestive and quality amount of proteins. The immune response is caused because the inflammation has to do with certain foods they may even be sensitive to. And then in turn, that causes a nutritional deficiency because in the small intestines, vitamins A, D, C, and E, and a variety of other essential fatty acids and amino acids are absorbed in the small intestinal. And when that mucosal lining is decreased, the immune system is decreased or dysregulated, then we'll have some inflammatory response. And due to that, that will cause more issues. So until you work on that imbalance, it can be, detriment to your body and actually keep cascading and getting worse. Now you can pin a list of, oh, that's fine. And then it says in the nervous system, right? So when the nervous system, the gut and the brain, it's like your gut is your second system. And why is it you're considered? So they call it the gut brain axis and they call it a dysfunction. When it's not working and it's off, why is it not working? That's where you get that gas, the bloating, irritability, abdominal pain. And it's basically because you're not digesting things properly. You're not doing what's needed. And you're either the stomach lining and the intestines are not moving properly. They're not absorbing properly. They're not doing what it's, made to do. And having those deficiencies will cause many neurological dysfunctions. And it will cause like the B vitamins that you need, all the B vitamins are super important. B12, B6, B1, magnesiums and irons and the fatty acids, all of these help with the neurotransmitters and the way you feel. And when you have a decrease in them, you're going to get more brain fog. You're going to have anxiety or depression, depending upon which ones are off. You'll have more fatigue. You'll have more mood swings and mood changes. So a lot of mental health issues actually come from the gut. They're still obviously a neuroplasticity within the brain, but when you fix some of your gut health, you can improve a lot of your mental clarity. It doesn't necessarily mean that you may never need medications, but it may mean that some individuals, if they're on the right, they do fix their microbiome, their small intestines, and what they've put into their body, and taken the right amount of nutrient-dense foods and nutrient-dense supplements as needed, they can actually improve their overall mental health and improving there. Because what happens is when you have so many deficiencies, it can cause many things. So when the small intestines have they're not absorbing properly, you'll have one big one, they call it B12, pernicious anemia, and that's because it's not absorbing the B12 or some of the folate. That can cause a lot of fatigue, cognitive issues, and that's, it's really important to make sure that's proper. Other disorders that come up are osteopenia, osteoporosis, vitamin D, neurological disorders. Impaired immune function really can have a detriment to many things in the body. Autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, malabsorption, increased toxin burden, impact on mental health, like the gut and brain axis, like I was talking about. What would be interventions that we would do to help you? So first, let's just talk about what it is. Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in. I just appreciate you coming in. So what would you do? Let's think about just mindful chewing. Mindful chewing helps with mechanical breakdown. You're breaking down in the saliva. The amylase helps with digestion, the carbohydrate digestion, and lubrication. You're signaling to the body and the brain sight, smell, and the food, and it triggers stimulation of other digestive enzymes and the gastric emptying or breaking down of foods. Now, if it's the right type of food, you're going to get the right type of enzymes. If it's not the right type of foods, your body will signal it and it will know the difference. The actions there come in, it stores the food, it goes into if you have the right amount of hydrochloric acid within the body, it will then mix with pepsin and the proteins and initialize the digestion. The problem is when we don't have the proper absorption of these nutrients, it will not release the right amount of chyme into the bottom, the duodenum of the stomach to then release into for the small intestine to do its signaling. If that signaling does not happen, then we don't have the right amount of composition and acidity, and that is because that needs to be released into the intestine so that the right amount of hormones are released to help with digestion. When things are not working in the initial segment of the small intestines, this becomes a problem. And those pancreatic juice or bile is not produced properly, and then there's an absorption issue. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, how's it going? Thanks for coming in. I appreciate you. Thanks so much. Thanks, kind. Try kind. I appreciate you. So think of it like there's a cascade of things. I don't want to get too scientific into it because it gets a little bit in depth, but I do talk about how the intestines have it releases many proteins, and your body releases many things. So I will go quickly overview that in the small intestine, the duodenum, down into the colon, also the gallbladder releases fat and proteins called chyme that stimulates the pancreas, which then stimulates the gallbladder, which then stimulates bile release, which then will help slow gastric emptying to produce, so you're not as hungry. Now, and this is in the sphincter of the Oddi. Now, in turn, as if your body will produce all these hormones on their own, but when there's a degradation or there's an irregularity or there's a problem, that's when you don't get, as I'm talking about malabsorption, GLP-1s and the body, you're not going to get that because these peptides are off. So that they're produced gastric inhibiting peptides, glucose inhibiting, insulinotropic peptide, gastric-like peptides, the K cells, L cells, all of these are being produced, but if they're not being secreted properly, you're not going to get that to trigger, which then causes problems to the pancreas, and then the pancreas does not produce the right amount of digestive enzymes, and in turn, those enzymes I talked about it previously, amylase, lipase, protease. If that does not happen, then it becomes that other cascade when you start to have this long term. Now, most of the time, this should be working properly, and our body shouldn't even have any issues, and you should be able to produce it with no problems. Now, like I said, it takes time, but over time, these things happen. Now, the liver and gallbladder, their idea and one of their many jobs is to produce bile from fat. Like if you're eating certain types of food, it's trying to get rid of the fat and break it down. And the gallbladder stores it and then concentrates it and then releases it as bile. The problem you have in the liver and the gallbladder, and most of the issues when it comes to detoxification, and then there's issues, is that the liver actually, instead of alcoholism being most of the problem, fatty liver is more of the problem, and gallstones are more of the problem. And we just keep having too much fatty diets and excess that the liver is just becomes layers and layers of fat, and it becomes layers and layers of no changes. And it's like it becomes such a mess. And the gallbladder, people just end up taking out the gallbladder And in turn, that doesn't really fix the problem because you're not root causing it, but it is very painful when you have gallstones. When you have gallstones, those stones go into the bile ducts and cause damage, and then becomes a problem and you're in pain. And it's usually because the root cause of that is your dietary choices and what you've done to cause those stones to be formed and not be released from the in smaller bites and done through the gallbladder out to the body and be released. And in turn, those gallstones are very painful. And then eventually there's overproduction. And now you have to take the gallbladder out. And now you've kind of bypassed it and you still have a problem because then you still have to fix the fatty liver, and the fatty liver is now actually going to cause you even more upset stomach, and like you'll notice you'll feel a little bit more like every foods will feel a little bit more like oily and things of that nature. The idea is that your body's trying to signal and tell you to stop eating those things, and if you don't, you're still going to have more detriment to the liver, which then could cause long-term ascites or stomach issues and more obesity and other inflammatory issues. And then then we go into the small intestines, and we're talking the small intestines to talk about the digestion, as I was saying about the brush borders. And in there, that's all about communication, and the GI helping with the nervous system, the brain. They're all connected. If the nervous system and the brain are not connecting properly, we're having, ongoing problems. That communication is not being directed properly. So that's when you'll notice is when people are more bloated. Those that are very anxious, high anxious, have IBS, diarrhea, or IBS-C, those patients actually are going to the bathroom more. Constipation is usually more depression related and not having the right amount of fiber and hydration. Anxiety related or other high inflammatory responses, they will be usually having more diarrhea or other irregular mental emotional stressors. So high stressors will have more problems with that. Low stressors may have more constipation. They might just be completely depleted. Think of it as like blood flow, and your body's just like depleted, has nothing left. So the malabsorption and your maldigestion is a major, major problem. Long-term, major issues of this, talking about in the mouth itself, can cause inadequate chewing. You're not going to break down things properly. Your stomach eventually will not be able to break things in the best ways. Now, how do you change it? You got to change your diet. You got to take the right type of enzymes. The scariest things you hear about is just not having the right amount of hydrochloric acid. Nice to meet you. Hi, Missy. And hi, Professor. What's up? Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. I'm just talking about malabsorption and maldigestion and getting a little extra about it, but I think can be interesting in its own way. So when you have these dysfunctions, so dysfunction it's not working properly. When I say dysfunction, so when your stomach's not working properly, or you don't have enough hydrochloric acid or too much, when they call it gastroparesis, when you have delayed gastric emptying, that's a big thing when you'll hear about people taking medications. Why is it delayed? You'll feel full. Now that can be helpful, but can also cause you nausea, and still can develop with digestion issues. When you have a dysfunction in the pancreas, you'll have exocrine insufficiencies, and it's not breaking down the right amount of amylase and lipase. Usually those main ones, the liver isn't being broken down. The small intestines are having a deficiency with the amount of peptides and nutrients. The brush border, or the leaky gut, as they say, has not it's degraded over time and will cause many enzymes not to be absorbed. It will also cause, when you have excess of it, will have maybe more of a diarrhea issue or just impaired nutritional problems, and you'll notice that your body will start to deplete and decrease. If you have any sort of overgrowth, whether it's bacterial or fungal, that will permanently cause you brush border a decrease, and then eventually leaky gut and malabsorption problems. And then you'll find that there is you don't understand why it's changing. And things that will help with that is then we have to clear out, bring back the good flora, clear out what was there, then put in the right amount of enzymes, and then maybe need antibiotics. So some will need antibiotics or fungal, depending upon if that is in, and there's certain tests that can be done for that. Your breath test to check for SIBO. Those are needed. When I talk about intestinal dysbiosis, which is the primary thing for that is like the gut biome. So we're talking about the different things in the gut biome. So would you believe in the gut biome itself? Hold on one second.
Thank you for listening to the Mindfully Integrative Show with Dr. Damaris Maria Grossman, family nurse practitioner. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnose, or treat. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your healthcare routine. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you enjoyed our show, please support us by leaving a mindful review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite streaming platform. Interested in being a guest or more information? Email us at info@mindfullyintegrative.com. For resources mentioned in the show, visit our website at www.mindfullyintegrative.com. You can also connect mindfully with Dr. Damaris on her social media links found on the site. May your strength and peace guide you to find a mindful way every day. Namaste.